Welcome to VoteProPot-Cast, the award-winning cannabis news podcast brought to you by VoteProPot.com. Here are your hosts, Phil Adams, Jay Britton, and Andrew McCreadies.
Biden's pick for drug czar is a bit out of the historical norm. We're going to tell you why. Jay, speaking of history, is going to give us a little cannabis history lesson. And Jay, you've also got a little bit of business news, right? For those,
yes.
For those who follow Canna-Bills. We've got all of that and so much more. Thanks a lot, folks, for coming and joining and sitting down or driving or whatever you're doing, but listening, most importantly, to our humble podcast. Thank you and welcome to another episode of VoteProPot-Cast. We're going to get started with some Inside the Beltway news. What about that?
Sounds good. But first, let me just interrupt.
Please do.
Can you see? We do this on Zoom, so he's looking at. See what I got today? I just got this. What it is?
I don't.
I'm going to show you. I bought a vape cartridge from my vape store in Virginia, which is not THC. It's just a vape. This is Delta 8 THC. Have you heard about it? That's the big craze now. There's a little loophole in the law. Delta 8 is very close to Delta 9, which of course is what we all used to using to get high. THC.
All right.
It's Delta 9. Delta 8 is a compound that's in the plant, in the flower, in a much smaller quantity. Mm-hmm. But what happened when they passed the hemp bill, the Farm Bill, whatever the hell they called it,
Farm Bill, right.
Making hemp legal.
2018.
There's a loophole where they go in and they can pull the Delta 8 out of the flower and concentrate it and sell it. And what it does is it gets you high. But it's different from Delta 9. It's a sister to Delta 9. Get you high, but it's, how do I explain it? It's like you realize you're high, but you don't have that lack of focus. You know how you get, you do a couple bongas, you're really stoned, and you're standing at the kitchen sink, or you have the refrigerator open for like 15 minutes.
Right,
and why am I standing here? And the time thing, you don't get that. And you don't get the paranoia. So anyway, you can buy this now legally. And it's pretty interesting.
Now, so you're enjoying the effects of this Delta 8?
I took a couple hits before the show. So let's see how that goes. But no, I've tried it, and it's hard to explain. It's not like a stone thing like what you're used to, smoking a joint or something. But you feel it.
Do you feel a physical sensation?
You feel a little bit of that euphoric kind of, I feel good thing, and I feel relaxed.
Wow!
Yeah, but I don't have that like, what time is it, man? So anyway, I just thought I'd throw it out there for those of you.
What did I come to the kitchen for again?
You know what I'd love is some people would write us, a podcast. That's podcast at VoteProPot.com, and let us know what you think of Delta 8. I'd be interested to see what people think.
Let's get a little bit of.
I didn't mean to interrupt your very important, up-to-date political news, Phil. I just
don't patronize me, man.
Okay, go for it.
No, I'm kidding. We've got two separate bills that now these have both been introduced into the House and Senate before, but didn't go anywhere. And as we know, when the Senate was controlled by the Republicans, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is not in a rush to get any of these things done.
That's for sure.
So they've been reintroduced, and there are two of them, and I'm going to start with the Secure and Fair Enforcement Banking Act. It's called the Safe Banking Act. It was reintroduced this week by Colorado Representative Ed Perlmutter, and this has got a lot of bipartisan support. There are more than 100 co-sponsors, and they're from both parties.
That's great.
And it's got a very strong chance of passing. Now, what the legislation does would allow financial institutions to basically serve the cannabis industry without facing any federal penalties, which many banks and credit unions, they don't want to take on any cannabis clients because of these federal sanctions, the fear of, and what happens? Well, they have to operate on a cash basis. And
crazy.
And it's a pain in the ass.
and dangerous. I mean, these guys are walking around millions of dollars in briefcases.
It keeps them, they're vulnerable to all kinds of crime. And it complicates, they've got all this financial regulation compliance. And it's just so complicated on a cash basis. It's not worth anybody's time in the financial world. I don't know who on the Republican side is sponsoring it, but it might be Kevin Cramer.
So they have a fair amount of Republican support?
Yeah, they've got strong Republican support. Great. I think it will pass. I have a feeling it would have passed if McConnell had ever, deigned to put it on the floor. But that's hard to say. But it's a good bet to pass now. Perlmutter said, quote, "It's time to enact safe banking to align federal and state laws and reduce the public safety risk in our communities." And it's true. And
we're just inching our way towards complete legalization.
This is inching our way. This is in the House. And a similar bill is expected to be introduced in the Senate next week. I don't know who is going to sponsor it, but that's the scuttlebutt. The other bill is called the Claim Act. And again, this is how, I don't know how they come up with these acronyms, but it's the Clarifying Law Around Insurance of Marijuana Act. It is what it says. Now, what it would do is it basically keeps the federal government out of the insurance, out of the penalties for insurance companies covering cannabis industry firms. It just would prohibit it.
So are they penalized now?
Yeah. You can be penalized simply for offering coverage.
Oh my God.
To a cannabis firm, and the same thing as
in the same lines as the banking,
in the same line as the banking. It's a sort of a financial industry, and it would also now there's a lot of provisions to this bill, but it would also, the other thing is it would require the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, to study and to report on any barriers that are being imposed, barriers to the marketplace, to financial services, licensing, any of that stuff. The GAO will be responsible to keep tabs on this and make sure that this all flows smoothly and people are not being unduly burdened. And the senator on the Democratic side who's sponsoring this is Bob Menendez of New Jersey, and on the Republican side is Rand Paul of Kentucky.
Well, Rand Paul's a libertarian, right? So he's always going to be on the side of getting the government out of your face.
That's right. And he said, here's what he said: the principles behind the Claim Act are simple. Respect the voices of the states and their people, and stop shutting out legitimate businesses from obtaining basic protections. How do you argue with that,
How do you argue with that, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So why are they doing this meaning federal legalization, in such an incremental way? Why don't they just, if they're going to take the time to pass all these bills, why don't they just pass a bill that says it's legal? Why all these little incremental baby steps? Yeah, I guess that's the way government works, I suppose.
Well, the old saying is that politics is the art of the possible.
Yeah.
So they're doing what they can.
Yeah.
With the makeup of the Congress and the White House being what it is, they have an opportunity. Why are they doing this all piecemeal? I really don't know.
Because they can.
But they're doing what they can, I guess.
Send us your thoughts at VoteProPot.com/contact, or send us an email at podcast@VoteProPot.com, and please give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to be part of the show, call our message line at 240-257-2441.
Remember we had on a guy, I don't know, maybe a year ago or a little less than a year, fellow by the name of Warren Bobrow.
Oh, I remember Warren well. We had a great time with Warren. Yeah,
a lot of fun. He's a big wig in the industry. You see him on TV and you see him all over the place. He
writes for Forbes magazine.
He writes for Forbes and a bunch of other magazines on cannabis, and he's also known as the Cocktail Whisperer.
That's right.
And he was on the show to talk about a lot of things, but one of which was promoting a new line of infused beverages he has, which I believe are out now, called Claus. Klaus.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So this is a story out of marijuana business. I suppose, with a K. Yeah, the original version.
Right.
This is a story out of Marijuana Business Daily by Bart Shanneman.
All right.
And the title of the story is How Are Cannabis-Infused Beverages Doing in the Market? Basically, sales of the cannabis-infused beverages are up 40% last year as companies sought to capitalize on new marijuana customers seeking a familiar form of consumption and those looking for an alternative to drinking alcohol.
Okay.
According to data from Seattle-based cannabis analytics firm Headset, sales of marijuana-infused beverages increased 40% last year versus 2019 in recreational markets such as California, Colorado, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington State. Cannabis-infused beverages rose from 67.8 million in 2019 to 95.2 million in 2020.
Wow.
So that sounds like a pretty significant growth.
Does to me.
But what you have to realize is the overall industry grew 40% too. So they grew kind of...
You mean the overall cannabis industry or the overall beverage
Yes.
industry?
Cannabis.
Okay.
All right.
But they didn't lag behind, so that's good.
Right. They're at the same 40% growth. Despite the strong growth of infused beverage market, there's still a small portion of the overall mix. They're about 1%. 1% of the entire cannabis sales are beverages.
All right.
Now, that kind of surprised me. I thought it would be a little better than that. But this year they're at 1.2%, 2021 so far. So they're edging up a little. It might seem obvious, but kind of the marketing idea, I think, for most of these companies is that you've got a lot of people who are new to cannabis.
Yeah.
Either have never tried it or haven't in a long time. And some of them are a little cautious about rolling a joint or doing a bong hit or buying a dab rig, you know?
Right.
But it's easy to buy a drink, pop a top, and drink it. And the other thing is they say that this is, again, how they're marketing it. It's much more acceptable. Let's say you go to a cocktail party with a bunch of friends. Somebody lights up a joint.
Right.
Everybody turns around and looks. What the heck?
What the hell's going on?
Yeah, right. You know what I'm saying? It's like, but if you go to the refrigerator and grab a can and crack it and pour it in the
Nobody's going to give it a second thought.
Nobody thinks about it. So they're thinking that's kind of the whole idea.
So it's a kind of a social fit-in type of a thing, a social acceptability.
Exactly.
Now, here's the question. You've had cannabis-infused beverages before. I don't recall that I ever have. I understand they don't taste so great.
Well, again, that was Warren's
deal, that he was going to produce something that really was good.
He's written 6 books on making drinks.
Yep.
And he says that he has come up with a formula and a way to infuse drinks and market them that taste delicious. I have not seen his drinks. I think they're in California.
Yeah, I don't think they're available in Maryland or Virginia.
Or Virginia. Yeah, no.
But I would like to try some claws.
Yeah, me too. I have had a couple of different, and they're fine. If you the kind I've had are where you put a little cap full and you drink the cap full.
Oh,
it's
okay.
flavored like fruit punch or something.
So it's like a little 5-hour energy or something like.
Exactly. Yeah, but I have not tried one of the seltzer drinks where you're going to drink 12 ounces.
Right.
I don't know what that's like.
I wonder how much THC is in one of those seltzer drinks.
It varies. A lot of them are actually making them fairly low, like
5 to 10. Yeah.
Yeah, so that, you can drink a couple socially and not get hammered,
Right.
And I think that's kind of the intent. I mean, why would you buy a drink that's 40% or 40 milligrams or something? You know what I mean?
I would.
They're 5, and you can drink 2 or 3 and get a little buzz, and it comes on slowly. And that's one of the things they talk about in this article was some of the people were cautious about trying it because it takes a while for it to kick in.
Yeah.
So there's a couple manufacturers who claim to be coming out with products that kick in between 5 and 15 minutes.
Well, that would be helpful, I think.
Yeah, like you have a glass of wine or a drink, and you feel it.
And 10 minutes later, how it's affected you.
Right. And the problem, you and I both know with edibles is sometimes it's an hour and a half.
And you don't think you've gotten any effect from it, and then you drink
more. 6 of them, and holy moly. So the drink market is doing well, but it's not blowing the doors off anybody.
So good luck to Warren and all the manufacturers. Anybody have any experiences with some of these cannabis infused beverages? Love to hear from you. Biden, he's the president.
Oh, right,
the president.
I've heard of him.
Yeah. Been around a little while. He has been busy, setting up his administration. And we've been sharing some of that with you in the last few segments or last few episodes. This week, and this is an article from Marijuana Moment, which I love, by the way. There's all kinds of great stuff.
Good
about his top pick, what a lot of people believe is his top pick, for the director of the Federal Office of National Drug Control Policy, a.k.a. the Drug Czar. Rahul Gupta is the leading candidate for the position of Drug Czar. He was the former chair of the West Virginia Medical Cannabis Advisory Board, and he served on Biden's transition team. What makes Gupta a little different is that he has actually publicly recognized the therapeutic benefits of cannabis.
Whoa. That's encouraging.
Yes, he has.
Really?
And he worked in West Virginia with the control board, advisory board, on a legal cannabis program. So to authorize medical use of marijuana. So that's a little bit different take on a drug czar. Drug czars are usually the enforcement czars saying, no, no, no.
Mm-hmm.
But this Rahul Gupta may be, if he's picked, he may be ready to break that mold.
What an interesting pick. Seriously.
Yeah.
What does that say?
Well, I think what...
How do you read those tea leaves,
I don't know, because the sum total of Biden's picks sends really mixed messages.
Right.
There
exactly.
was...
That's my point.
The other one, oddly enough, also named Gupta, Vanita Gupta,
right.
Who was confirmed, I believe, as the Assistant Attorney General,
mm-hmm.
is not in favor of legalizing or decriminalizing drugs.
Either one.
She just said flat out, and we told you about that last week. Merrick Garland, who was confirmed as Attorney General,
mm-hmm.
may be a little less strident about it. We just don't know. So, I mean, up and down the Biden administration, I'm not getting any strong indication of a pro-cannabis bent from these folks. Although I'm not getting an anti-cannabis bent either. So, I mean, that's something.
Yeah, it could be a couple things. It could be just that's just not a priority for them, and that's not one of the things that you're looking at on the resumes of these people. Or
but,
it could be,
but as drug czar, you would think.
As drug czar, that's what I was going to say. But as drug czar, a guy who's very pro, that kind of, I don't know. How you read those tea leaves,
I think it's encouraging if you're going to read anything into those leaves.
Exactly.
Whatever kind of leaves that you want, it's encouraging. But again, wait and see. The odd thing is that the drug czar, the director of the ONDCP, is required by federal law to oppose any legalization effort of any drug banned under the Controlled Substances Act. So I don't know where he's going to fit or what's going to happen, but a
bit of a dilemma he's in there.
But maybe it's time for that law to go as well. So let's hope.
Got a new segment. We're going to try this out.
All right.
On a regular basis, we're going to do a little piece on history. History is related to cannabis. Last week, we did a little something on the Beatles.
Yeah.
And cannabis, remember?
I got a 100.
You did. You slammed it.
I got both questions right.
I think the idea is we'll cover a lot of different topics, events that occurred.
You're not going to quiz me again, are you?
I might have a question for you at the end. But, just it could be anything. It could be 2,000 years ago, the Chinese and what they did with it. It could be, how marijuana became illegal in the United States in the 30s. We'll cover all that. But we're going to start out with something fun this week, and that's Cheech and Chong. All right. So,
are you really mad? All right.
Well, there's a lot more to Cheech and Chong, I think, than what people assume by the characters they played.
Well,
and that's what we're going to talk about.
The characters
today.
We grew up with.
The characters we grew up with, the stereotype stoner. Many people suggested that, they were detrimental to the cannabis movement because, they created this stereotype.
The stoner stereotype?
They defined what the stoner is. I disagree with that.
Oh, I wholeheartedly disagree with that.
Do you? Good.
Yeah.
Because I would argue that Cheech and Chong did the exact opposite, that they, through their comedy, kind of shined a spotlight on the counterculture of the 60s and 70s, and part of that counterculture was cannabis. Now,
and as much as anything, they made fun of it.
Exactly. But if you look at cannabis and the way that cannabis was perceived, the use of cannabis before Cheech and Chong, before the 60s,
right,
before the counterculture, it was the reefer madness thing.
Right.
Our parents' generation, the 50s, the 40s, and before, they believed that people that used cannabis were,
Mexicans,
Hispanic,
black people, right,
African
jazz musicians,
yes, and that they took it and it was like heroin and it made them go crazy and rape women. This is what people believed. And I think they opened the eyes in some ways, them and others,
right,
through their comedy. And
just regular dudes.
Yeah, and just to get a perspective of what they did, Cheech and Chong, the ones that you hear on the records, in the movies, and the stage, were actually two really hardworking, really intelligent comedy writers and performers. Yeah, they created these characters, and there's not unlike what Three Stooges or. The Laurel
Marx
Hardy
Brothers or something, right?
Exactly. It's a character to make fun of and laugh at,
right?
But the stoner characters that they portrayed was an artistic creation. It was just something they did that was funny, and it was a vehicle for their comedy.
One of many. I mean, you listen to their records; they had all kinds of characters,
all kinds of stuff. That's right.
They were all different characters, right?
Cheech Marin said in an interview that he never smoked pot while he worked, ever, not once. Not when they were on stage doing comedy, not when they were making movies or records.
Oh, I believe it. You wouldn't be able to.
This guy was really smart. He went to, I'm talking about Cheech, he went to Cal State at Northridge, and he was an English literature major.
Oh, yeah.
And he dropped out 8 credits short of graduating to run to Vancouver, Canada to avoid the draft, to avoid the Vietnam draft. And that's where he met Tommy.
Tommy, who was a Canadian.
Right. Exactly. Not only that, Cheech was, this cracked me up, he was a member of the Phi Sigma Kappa fraternity. Can you picture that?
Sure, why not?
If you ever listen to him interview, he's a smart dude. He went on the first Jeopardy celebrity. Remember they had that celebrity
he knocked
thing?
it out.
He kicked the ass.
Yeah.
Of no other than CNN's Anderson Cooper. Crushed him. Didn't just beat him, crushed him.
Right.
He's a smart dude.
Yeah.
So anyway, a little history. The guys met, the two of them met in 1968 in Vancouver, and Marin was delivering carpets, and he met Tommy Chong. Tommy was a musician, and he was running an improv group in a strip bar that his family owned. And so he talked Marin into joining this, and they, after a while of doing the stuff, they became a stand-up duo.
Right.
And they became quite popular in Vancouver. And they decided, they've kind of done all they could do in Vancouver. They said, let's go to L.A. They went to L.A. and they were discovered in clubs there by no other than Lou Adler. Now, those of us who follow music know who Lou Adler is. Right. He was a huge producer. He owned the Roxy.
Right.
He owned...
he owned a couple of those clubs on the Strip.
Yeah, a couple clubs on the Strip. He owned Dunhill Records. He started that record company, huge record label.
Yep.
He produced Tapestry.
Yeah.
One of the biggest selling albums of all time.
Yeah.
He saw them in a club, said, hey, let's make a record. They were like, a record? Yeah, let's make a comedy
record. Right.
So like in 1970, they made their first album, which did really well. It's just called Cheech and Chong, 71. And they followed it up in 72 with an album called
Big Bamboo.
That's right, Big Bamboo. And that became...
That had a great big rolling paper. Came with a big rolling paper.
I remember that. Yeah, well, that was the biggest selling comedy album in history at the time.
Yep.
And then their third album won a Grammy. So
Los Cochinos. I had that one.
That's right. After they had all that success with records, they decided we need to make a movie, right? Well, so they put this script together. They went around to a bunch of the studios in LA. Nobody would do it. Nobody. They thought that's too controversial. A couple stoners. It's not going to be fun. It was stupid, So what happened is Paramount, Lou Adler worked with Paramount, and Paramount said, I'll tell you what, we'll let you use our studio and our facilities, but we're not going to finance it. So they financed themselves. They were eating peanut butter and sandwiches by the time they finished that movie. They spent every penny they had making that movie.
Making Up in Smoke.
Up in Smoke, which was huge.
Yep.
I think they spent a few $100,000, which is nothing for a movie.
And made millions.
And it grossed like 50 million or 45 million.
Yikes.
So they did really well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of their history. And they actually split up at some point in, I think, their mid-'80s. Yeah. They had a little bit of a falling out, and they each went their own ways. Actually, Cheech had a very successful solo career in television.
Oh, yeah. He was a regular on...
one of those
what's those
cop shows.
Well, no, Cheech was on the cop show Nash Bridges.
Cheech. Nash Bridges, right.
Tommy Chong was on the one with Tim Allen. What was that show? Home Improvement.
Tool Time.
Home Improvement.
Home Improvement. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So they had a little bit of a falling out, and they did get back together eventually, and they made an appearance on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert in 2018 in a response to John Boehner. Remember Boehner?
Boehner, sure.
He was a Republican Speaker of the House, and he left Congress, and he found himself on the board of a big marijuana company.
A cannabis entrepreneur now, yeah.
Yeah, so they went on to talk about that. They expressed their displeasure that marijuana was no longer rebellious. And I love this quote. I'll finish up with this. Cheech said that he could now buy weed from a store in a strip mall, when we used to have to buy it from behind a store in the strip mall. So anyway, I think Cheech and Chong did a lot to kind of reverse the stigma and kind of make it fun, lighthearted, make you realize that it doesn't make people who use it murderers and rapists and addicted like
just
heroin
regular
and all that.
People.
Just regular guys.
Now, you may remember this. Back in junior high school, Jay and I have known each other since then.
Yeah, that's right.
Our junior high school had a very good basketball team, and we would have pep rallies start of each season. And one year we had a pep rally. Do you remember Michael Alexander?
Oh, yeah.
Tall, skinny, black guy.
Tall, skinny guy. Uh-huh.
They did a version of Basketball Jones.
That was
which was a big. It was huge. He had a basketball with him, and he wrote the words on the basketball in pen in case he forgot them. And he played, what was the character's name? Tyrone Shoelaces.
Yeah, that's right. And I think a lot of the teachers had no idea. Right. Now some did. Some of the hipper ones were smirking, but yeah, a lot of them did.
That basketball was like a basketball to me.
I remember that. That was like early 70s, man.
Yeah. 73, 74, something like that.
All right, here's a final question for you.
All right.
Let's see how your trivia is. One question for you. Their first film, as we said, was Up in Smoke. What year was that film released? 76, 77, 78, or 79?
78.
Bam, you're good, man. Nailed it.
Yep, I just remember where I was when it came out.
That's great. That's great.
All right, so I'm 3 for 3 on quiz
you are
questions.
It, bro.
When the thing about Tommy Chong is, when I wanted to learn how to do a Canadian accent or those kind of, I listened to Tommy Chong.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, man. He's got one of the best Canadian accents out there. I never even know what he's talking about, but he's got a great one.
Well, it's funny because Cheech Marin does the best, like Hispanic, Southern California, Compton accent. But that's how he speaks at all.
But he doesn't normally speak, but I guess that's what he was brought up on. But he was great. But the two of them, man, well, what a great comedy team. Some of the best comedy ever.
Yep.
Guess that just about does it for us this week. We are glad that you joined us. We hope you enjoyed the show. And if you did, tell a friend about it. Get some people in here. We love seeing the numbers each month, and you've been great. So we're really appreciative of all of you folks out there. And again, if you've got some thoughts on this, on Cheech and Chong, on infused beverages, we'd love to hear some opinions, some ideas on that. Jay's going to tell you how to get in touch with us.
We'd love to get an email from you at podcast, that's PODCAST at VoteProPot.com. And we have a message line, 240-257-2441.
And keep track of us and all the other goings on in the cannabis world on our social media platforms. Just go to Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, or Twitter and do a search for Vote Pro Pot.